What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Caddie Network's Under the Strap podcast. I'm your host, TJ Auclair, Director of Content for the Caddie Network. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Caddie Network. This week, we're excited to welcome John Rathouz, Joe Skovron, and John Wood. What do these three guys have in common? Along with being PGA Tour caddies, all three were caddies in the 2016 Rio Olympics, the first time golf had a spot in the games since 1904. Rathouz, who's from Nebraska, was part of Team Ireland that week, looping for Seamus Power. Power tied for 15th. Rickie Fowler finished T37 that week with Skovron on the bag, while Wood helped guide Matt Kuchar to a spot on the podium, taking home the bronze medal for his third-place showing. Welcome, guys. Let's get started. Rat, starting with you, what was your Olympic experience like? Did you spend your time there with Team Ireland in the Olympic Village, or were you elsewhere?
No, yeah, it was an amazing experience. It was experience of a lifetime. I mean, I was on Team Ireland from the second I got on the plane and was really brought in. Well, we had a good group. Our captain was Paul McGinley, who's a legend, and then Padraig Harrington was the other teammate, and then Ronan, his caddy, also a legend, and Seamus, and they just made me feel so welcome. And stayed in the village with them. Roomed with them all week. I guess Padraig got a house with his family eventually, but wore the green, the tricolor all week long, and was part of the squad. And I was doing everything I could to help him get on the podium, and went to a lot of events and was rooting for the Irish athletes. And it was such a cool experience. I was kind of reflecting back on it a little bit, getting prepared.
And Joe, how about you? Did you stay in the village? Were you there for the opening ceremonies or anything like that?
Yeah, actually, Rickie and I were the only ones with Team USA at the opening ceremonies, because the other guys were playing a different event the week before. Can't remember which event it was. And I stayed in the village the whole time.
Yeah. And Woody, I know you guys were at that event before, right? Was it Hartford?
Travelers? Yeah, it was the Travelers in Hartford, yeah. So Patrick and Bubba and Matt had all played there. So Travelers did an unbelievable thing, and because we played there, they set up a plane for us to go straight down since we were short on time. So as soon as we finished Sunday, we hopped on the plane, went straight down to the Olympics at that point. So it worked out perfectly for us. But yeah, unfortunately we had to miss the opening ceremonies.
Woody, starting with you, for most of our lives, I'm not sure we could have ever imagined you'd be going to the Olympics, maybe as a spectator, but to be a part of it. Golf wasn't a part of it for so long. What was it like when it finally sunk in that you're going to be able to be a part of, such a cool experience?
I'm an Olympics nut every time it's on. I love watching events I've never watched, for 4 years, and all of a sudden you're totally into them all of a sudden. When we first qualified, it took a crazy set of circumstances for us to qualify. We ended up birdieing a couple holes late at Akron to get to 15th in the world, which was the minimum you had to get to. And then DJ didn't go and Jordan didn't go. And all of a sudden we found ourselves in it. And I didn't know what to expect. I know we were playing a lot of golf at that point in the year, and I didn't know how tired we were going to be, if we were going to be out of gas, or what the experience was going to be like. Once we got there, it was off the charts. It exceeded all my expectations. It was so much bigger feeling than just a golf tournament once you got down there and felt part of this huge team, rather than, either just yourself or just your three other guys on your team. You felt part of a much, much bigger experience. And like I said, it exceeded all my expectations, and it'll go down as one of the best weeks of my career.
Joe, how about you?
Yeah, it was interesting leading up to it, with the Zika. And then for us, we were trying to make the Ryder Cup team, and we were right on that edge. And we actually ended up not making the team, getting picked and we were playing like this huge schedule that the Olympics went in the middle of it. And then we ended up missing the Tour Championship by like a half point. So it was interesting how it all went down. And to be honest, I kind of pushed like, hey, are we sure we want to go down there? Because we got this Ryder Cup thing, and we've got the Tour Championship, and, the FedEx Cup, and all these things that are so important in our sport. And Rick was really all in with the Zika, with everything. He was one of the guys that was all in and wanted to go. And I'm so glad he made that decision, because it was such a cool week, and there were so many cool experiences. And us getting down there early, we got down there early enough to go to a lot of events before we started practice rounds. He pushed for me to be a part of the opening ceremony since there was no other golfers there. So that was unbelievable experience for me that, I never imagined.
Yeah. And Rat, how about you, man? Just talk about, being a part of the Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, well, they were kind of talking about their journey there, and John and Joe both, been on the bag with their players for a long time, and I had just started up with Seamus in April, and just the backstory for me was I remember when it got announced that there was going to be golf in the Olympics, and it was probably 3 years prior or something, and at the time I was caddying on the Corn Ferry Tour, and I was in Midland, Texas, working for this guy named Jose Toledo, and he was from Guatemala, and I remember telling him, I'm like, Jose, the Olympics, I want to go, if you're qualified in 4 years, like, I'm your guy. And so we kind of made this like pact in Midland, Texas. And then, my career was going on, and, I was still down on the Corn Ferry Tour, and I got on with Lucas Lee, who was this rookie out of Brazil. And I'm like, all right, now I got Lucas Lee, going to be on the home squad. And that kind of fell through, and he ended up not making the team. And it kind of just fell out of the back, out of the back of my head for a while. And then I got this call to go work for Seamus. And the first week I worked for him, he won, and didn't think about it at the time. And then just this confluence of events happened where Rory didn't want to go. And then Shane Lowry's wife was having a baby, and Graham McDowell's wife was pregnant, and they didn't want to go. And then, after Padraig, Seamus was the next guy. And so it was crazy how it just kind of, I put this little nugget out there 3-4 years prior, and, for me personally, and then all of a sudden, I find myself in Rio with Seamus, on Team Ireland, which is not how I could have even have drawn it up, when I first thought about it. And so, like those guys said, it was the experience of a lifetime. It was so cool to be a part of such a big production that it is, and to see it up close in person and be a part of it was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Now, Joe, that schedule you mentioned, tremendously condensed with all these big events going on that year. Right around the same time, you have majors, PGA Championship was there. You had the Olympics, then, like you said, the playoffs start, the Ryder Cup. What was that stretch like for you guys, you and Woody, both on that Ryder Cup team?
Yeah, it was a big stretch. I mean, they played the week before. We went straight back and played Wyndham, trying to get points for the Ryder Cup and for FedEx. And then got ourselves in a position to win at Bethpage in the playoff event, didn't pull it off, and actually fell back enough to miss that Ryder Cup team, but then got picked. And then it turns into, not that this is a Ryder Cup pod, but the coolest one I've been a part of, because we finally won, and Hazeltine, it was awesome, and Rickie had this great week. So it was a busy schedule, but, I mean, that's just what's going to happen that time of year when you've got the Olympics, you've got the Ryder Cup, and so you're glad to do it.
And Woody, how about you, that condensed schedule? And also, I'm just curious, too, you guys had the bronze medal in the Olympics. Did that feel like winning an event to be on that podium?
Yeah, I was similar to Joe when we qualified. I was, I wanted to, really went to Matt and said, make sure you want to go. And, because it was so condensed and there were so many big events and not knowing what it was going to be like. So I was in the same boat as Joe, really making sure that Matt wanted to go. Once we got down there, like I said, it was off the charts special. And yeah, to get on the podium, we started the last day, I don't know, 12th or 20th or something. And one of the first things I said to Matt on Sunday was, hey, 4th is the same as 60th here. So there is no reason not to go out today and try and make every shot you hit, because it just, you didn't have those things in your head that you normally do where, hey, 4th place is pretty good. You're going to get, X amount of money for 4th place, or, let's play smart coming in. There was none of that. It was, 3rd or 60th was the exact same result, basically, in my mind. So when he got off to that great start on well, not a great start. He actually parred, I think, the first 6 and then caught fire. But once we caught fire, it felt what a rush to know, playing that last hole, that we had secured a medal. And at that point, what color was it going to be? It would have been great to get, silver or gold, obviously, but to know that you had one, coming from behind like Matt did, was just, it felt like a win. Absolutely.
Was there any kind of little memento you got as a caddy with the?
Yeah, the USOC, for every medalist on the U.S. team, they provide the medalist with what they call an Order of Ecos medallion, which is given to a coach or somebody who helped them, medal. basically in their career. I knew nothing about it. And about 45 minutes, I get really emotional at team events anyways, both ways. I'll Ryder Cups presidents. I live for them. So I was, tearing up a little bit, knowing what had just happened. And then about 45 minutes after Matt did his medal ceremony and, did some media and stuff. And they brought me out to the 18th hole with Matt and Sibby. And Andy and Mac, who helped out the U.S. team a lot. And there was this woman from the USOC, and she told me what this ECOS medallion was and presented it to me and said it was for, helping a U.S. athlete medal. And I lost it. So I'll
How
try
cool
and show
is
it
that?
to you there.
Wow.
That's what they presented to me after
Wow.
Matt got third place. And it was just still one of my favorite things that I've ever received. And it still to this day gives me goosebumps, and it meant so much.
Okay. And John and Joe, or Woody and Joe, how did this compare to a Ryder Cup setting? It was a individual event, but you're there as Team USA. Was there anything that reminded you of a Ryder Cup at all, or was it just completely different? Starting with you, Joe.
Yeah, I didn't think it was similar at all, just in the case that you were playing you were part of a team, but you were playing as an individual for a medal. There was no team combination award or anything of that sort. So that was completely different. You did some of the things together and everything, but it was more about where you felt more like you were part of a team was when you were back at the village or when you were going to events together. That was a ton of fun, and that had more of a Ryder Cup feel to it, that, doing things with Woody and Kessler and, kind of that whole deal. But other than that, the tournament part of it felt completely different because you don't have a partner and there's no team aspect to it with the actual medals or anything of that sort.
Same for you, Woody?
Yeah, I would echo exactly what Joe said. They're just you were playing an individual, a 4-day medal, tournament like you do every week. It was for something bigger, but obviously there wasn't a team event, and also the crowds were pretty just, hey, we're out here, we're interested, but they really weren't rooting one way or the other. There was no partisanship. It was just, people just having fun watching an Olympic event. So I couldn't agree with Joe more. Didn't feel anything like a Ryder Cup.
Yeah. And Rat, you mentioned you had just started working with Seamus that April. I'd imagine just a few months later, that had to be, if not the biggest highlight of your career, certainly up there. What was it like hanging out with Team Ireland that whole time?
Yeah, I mean, it was a highlight, and it was awesome to hang out with Team Ireland. I mean, like I was saying, those guys really took me under their wing. Early on, I hadn't really hung out with Padraig before, and so I was kind of telling him my last name, Rathouz, and it's kind of an unusual name, and I got a nickname out of it. Like for the rest of the time, and still to this day, they call me Ochak Francoch, which is like Gaelic for House of the Rat.
Say that again.
Ochak Francoch.
Got it. That's fantastic.
So they don't have Johns over in Ireland, so I was Sean Ochak Francoch all week. And, absolute legends. And we just had so much fun going around with them. I remember going to the field hockey one night, and we sat in the Irish section, and they're doing all their chants and, arms around each other and stand up for the boys in green. And it's just so cool. I've never been a part of a Ryder Cup like these guys have. And just to kind of piggyback on earlier about the atmosphere, like, I've caddied in the Masters and I haven't done a British Open either. And the atmosphere at a regular golf tournament was probably exceeded kind of what the Olympics was from where the crowd standpoint was. What the prize was, up there, obviously, in the end. But yeah, I wouldn't trade that experience for anything.
So you just mentioned field hockey earlier. Woody talked about how he was, he's always loved the Olympics. Were there any events that you guys took in those Olympics outside of golf where maybe it was a sport you didn't usually pay attention to and maybe you pay a little more attention to now because you got a new appreciation for it? Rat, we'll start with you.
Well, I don't know if I pay attention anymore now, but we went to about 10 events. One of the ones we had the most fun at was handball, which I knew nothing about, and we went to that. Like I said, the field hockey atmosphere was great. We did table tennis and weightlifting and boxing. The highlights, beach volleyball. Seamus and I went to beach volleyball down on Copacabana Beach one evening, which was great. And then, we did swimming a lot. We got to see Michael Phelps win a gold medal in one of the events. And we were kind of like in the warm-up pool area, just kind of shooting the breeze. And we made it the last day to watch Usain Bolt won the 100-meter, won another gold medal in that. And so that was pretty cool to be at as well in that stadium. There's so many sports that are going on there. We didn't get to go to all of them, but, the velodrome, that was another one where it's like, that was pretty unique. So we really enjoyed the handball, though. We got a crack out of that, as the Irish would say.
And Joe, you said you made it to some of the competitions before other guys got there. Anything that stands out to you?
So we went to all kinds of stuff, but the ones that stand out to me, we were there the night that Phelps got 22 and 23, 21 and 22. I don't know. He's got so many, I can't keep track of them. And Katie Ledecky and everything. And it's like looked at as one of the biggest nights in the history of U.S. swimming when they talk about it. So that was electric. And we were sitting, right behind Mike Tirico and Hannah Storm. So we had unbelievable seats. And that was a fantastic night. And then got to see the USA play Australian basketball, which was very cool for me. The only thing I didn't get to see that I wanted to see that John got to go to was Usain Bolt running the 100 meters. I've always been a big 100-meter fan. We went to all kinds of stuff, gymnastics, all kinds of other things. So it was that was the best part of the week, was going to the events and experiencing that for sure.
And Woody, did you get to catch anything that stuck out?
Yeah, same as those guys. The greatest thing was, you play your practice round or your tournament round, and usually you have kind of okay, we did this today, let's work on this. I need to go check that. But this was different. As soon as the last putt finished on 18, whether it was practice or another tournament, it's like, all right, where are we going? Where can we go to? What's available? Can we go to this? Can we go to that? So to immediately drop golf as soon as it was over was awesome. And yeah, I mean, it didn't matter what the event was. It was the Olympics, and you watch, weightlifting. I would never watch weightlifting, in my life, but knowing that these people have trained for 4 years and this is it for them. And we watched table tennis, and Kuch went to badminton, said it was unbelievable. And swimming was obviously a highlight watching that, but the fact that it was the Olympics, the event was almost secondary. The fact that this was the biggest thing for everybody else we were watching. Golf has the Masters and the U.S. Open and Ryder Cup and other things that are probably always going to be bigger than the Olympics. Well, not for most athletes. This is it. You get one chance in 4 years, and to watch that and how much it meant to them was such a highlight for me.
And since you guys were part of the Olympic contingent there for the U.S. and Ireland, did your pass allow you to kind of get into any of those events? Is that how it worked, or did you have to get tickets? What was that like?
Well, we at first, the first couple of days we were there, we're like, oh, this is sold out, that's sold out. We were trying to buy tickets, and then McGinley, who's, been around the world, he's like, no, we're taking our passes. And we just kind of snuck in through security, and maybe it was that kind of the Brazilian security was a little bit more, they were a little bit more lax, and we just kind of, he was like, you walk in like you know what you're doing and you're going to get in. And so we just kind of had that mentality, and we just went to whatever we wanted to go to. Really was pretty cool.
That's great. Was it the same for you two guys as well?
For us, it was a little bit different. Like the passes were always kind of questioned on what was going on, especially I think the players had a little bit different pass than us, like where they would get and everything. But I believe it was NBC kind of took over on that for us because of Rickie and Matt and those guys. And so we ended up getting like unbelievable seats for the basketball and fantastic seats for the swimming. So that was very cool that they took care of us and made sure that we got to see those events.
Yeah, same thing. It was we had to have tickets to get in. Once we got in, our passes got us to kind of a special area to watch with the other athletes. But there was nothing that we got, like I said, we got turned down from nothing we asked to go to. Mac and Andy were able to get us tickets to anything we tried to, and they did a great job. So, yeah, got to go to everything we wanted to.
Now, a big storyline, particularly in golf leading up to that, those Rio games, was Zika, which, Joe, you mentioned a little bit earlier. Was there any hesitation for you guys to go there? Were you worried about it? And if not, I'm also curious about when you got back and played regular tour events. Were there any guys that came up to you that had the chance to be there and didn't go that maybe regretted it after hearing about the experience? Joe, we'll start with you.
Okay. Yeah, there was definitely a worry, that, and then there were security concerns. I think, you didn't know what you were getting into. You were getting into something, and there was so much talk about the Zika that you didn't know how bad it was or what was going on. And it turned out it was a little bit blown out of proportion for sure. And we got down there and felt safe. They had great security for us. And when you were in the village, you felt very safe. So that whole thing, it turns out, we're all glad we went. And I think there were some guys that regretted they didn't go, but they were just going with the information they were given. So when you have that information, you have to make a decision based on that. And you don't know any better than the information you're given.
Brett, were there any nerves for you going down there?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, not as much on the Zika, and I don't know why. I think Seamus and I were in a little different boat. Like, we were the list finally got to us, and it's like, we're not going to turn this down. Like, if we don't go, someone else is going to go. So we were all about it. As we got closer to getting on the plane and going, I got a little bit more nervous about the security side of things. You've heard about some of those things at Olympics in the past where someone just does something stupid. And I had a little bit of nerves about that. But, once we got down there, kind of settled into the routine and saw how it was all set up, I felt a lot more comfortable with things. And, I didn't hear of anyone directly regretting going, but I knew that there had to be some guys that wished they would have gone once they saw how it all played out. But you're right. You didn't know how it was going to play out ahead of time. And I was really, they're delaying it another year. I feel like the one in Japan is going to have probably an even deeper field and probably a better atmosphere at the golf course because they're so crazy about their golf over there. But, we were part of the first one in 112 years. I mean, that was pretty cool to be a part of.
And Woody, talk a little bit about the host city, Rio. Had you ever been there before? And did you get to explore the city at all when you were down there, or was it just the golf and then the events that you were going to?
Yeah, I didn't really get to explore much at all. The days were full. It was, the sun was going down at 5:30. So once we were done with golf for the day, it was get to other events. And where most of the Olympic events were held was kind of pretty far outside the city and the nightlife and stuff like that. So I didn't really get a chance to see a lot of it, unfortunately. But it is what it is. You just didn't have time, if we were closer, it probably would have been easier just to grab a cab or go downtown with Joe for dinner or something like that. But it was so far away that I didn't really have an opportunity to do it.
Mm-hmm. And Joe, is there anything in golf that you could compare that event to? Just the magnitude of it? Did it feel like a major? Is it kind of just in its own realm?
I would say it's in its own realm. Yeah, I think it's. I think being a part of the Olympics, like we were saying, all the events, all those athletes that put so much into it, but it's so much different with golf, like Woody pointed out earlier, because we have the majors, we have the Ryder Cup, all those things. You're not working for 4 years for that one thing like all of those athletes are.
Yeah. And Rat, talk a little bit about the golf course. What, if any, course in the U.S. would you compare it to? I mean, it is a Gil Hanse course, but we saw some crazy stuff out there. The wildlife that we would see back here on TV. What was that like? What was the course like, and just the wildlife around it?
Yeah, I thought the course was fantastic. I thought it was really unique, and it was perfect for for being in Brazil, and the way it played was fun. I thought in my head, I thought about that a little bit. Maybe a little bit of Trinity Forest, maybe a little bit of Chambers Bay, a little bit of Pinehurst number 2. The way the grasses were, like, it didn't play as linksy as it looked. And that was interesting, but it was a fun course to be out on. The routing was great. The scoring was maybe a little better than, you never know how it's going to be when you're out on a course the first time. And the wildlife was awesome. And they had, I forget the name of those. You guys remember the name of those giant
capybaras?
Yeah. And they penned them away, though. They were out early in the week, and then they got them off the course.
For people listening, those things, they almost looked like rats the size of dogs.
Yeah.
It was.
Have you seen the Princess Bride? Rodents of unusual size, ROUSs? Yeah, that's what they were.
Were you freaked out at all when you saw this stuff? I mean, you don't see that here in the U.S.
I was interested. I don't know if I was freaked out, but it was certainly fascinating to watch them and just see what they did. Yeah.
Yeah. And Joe, tell me your impressions of the golf course. Clearly not what you're used to. You've seen most of the courses on the PGA Tour. You're, I think, going in there blind. Were you doing any research online before you got down there?
Not a whole lot. Usually once you get down, I knew I was getting down there so early that I was going to have plenty of time. I think John pretty much nailed it. It reminded me of the Sandbelt golf courses in Australia, like Melbourne area, but didn't play as firm yet. You know, it was a newer golf course, so it wasn't playing that firm yet. The turf wasn't there, but it had that look to it, and it had a very cool look, very cool design. I liked it.
Yeah. Any local meals that stood out while you were down there, or were you just kind of sticking to what you knew? Joe?
For me, I mean, yeah, there's nothing that I really remember meal-wise, to be honest. I ate a lot in the village, so it was, you know, pretty basic. You know, it's like a college cafeteria really going through there. So I was surprised at how badly some of these top athletes ate. That was shocking to me. Like McDonald's was the most popular place in the village. You couldn't get in there. And it was shocking to me. I'm like, wait, these guys are competing and they're eating McDonald's? Like, it was crazy.
Rhett, how about you?
Well, yeah, that's right. I never got to the McDonald's. I don't think I got to the McDonald's a week, but there was always a huge line there. It was its own standalone thing. We ate in the village all the time, and I would say there was no memorable meals. The food was okay, but the whole place was really memorable. I mean, this thing was 3 football fields long, and just to see everybody in their gear with their country's name on it was unbelievable. I mean, you had 190 some countries, and everybody's milling around, and they were, you know, sitting together, and then sitting, you know, guys from China sitting next to guys from the U.S. And, you know, it was just, you know, I remember they had these like fudge ice cream bars, and we would always go up there at the end and grab those. You know, that was that was our dessert. But that whole mess hall or whatever it was just quite a scene.
And Woody?
Yeah, same. I only went in there and ate a couple times with Joe and Rickie, but it was fascinating people watching. I'll say that. Like they said, I'll mimic the size of it was unbelievable. The food was very average, but for me personally, I was like, here's this fat 46-year-old guy. What could he possibly be competing in? Is what I kept thinking. Like, is anybody looking at me like, what's this guy? Is this a janitor? Or what is this guy doing in here? He's got a uniform on, but he certainly can't be on any of the teams. So
right.
It was funny for me that way, trying to decide what sport could I pull off right now, and I couldn't think of any of them really. Maybe curling if it was a Winter Olympics, but there was nothing going on.
Yeah, that was, I mean, just to kind of expand on that, like, I was all concerned going down there. Like, I was hitting the gym hard, like, 'cause I'm going to get a shape. Like, and even if I would have gotten the best shape of my life, I would have still stood out. You know, I did go to the gym a couple times down there, and that was an experience. I mean, there's this guy in there with this shirt that says F gravity, and he's doing box jumps onto a 6-foot-high thing. And, you know, Seamus said he's doing his, like, little golf stretches, and there's this girl just knocking out pull-ups one after another. And I remember I got a picture with, like, you guys all know, like, Squirrel. Like, it's me and Squirrel, like, selfie. I'm like, you know, we're not, like, look at us. We don't look like everyone else. And that was kind of fun to walk around and see the other caddies walking around, you know, with the bag slung on their shoulder, like, being like, you know, we're here too.
That's great. Now, guys, years from now, when, you know, you look back fondly on those Olympic Games, what's the one memory you'll remember most? And Woody, we'll start with you. I think you already brought it up, possibly that 18th green and getting that medal that you got. But was there anything else that you'll really look back on and say, man, that was awesome to be a part of?
You know, not one incident other than that, you know, seeing Matt on the stand and me getting that Order of Eco Cadet medallion. But as a whole, it's just, I had to look at the week as a whole more than anything and think how much bigger it was than a normal event, and how you were just a part of something. You know, normally when we're at a golf tournament, that's what's going on in that town for the week. It's the show. It's the big thing. Well, we were just a small part of it. You know, golf's over on the side here and we're doing our thing, but we're part of this huge, you know, worldwide global event. You know, and I kept kind of pinching myself and thinking, technically I'm on Michael Phelps' team this week. So I kept thinking stuff like that, this is really cool. So it wasn't one event. It was just the week as a whole for me.
And Joe?
There was two for me. The opening ceremonies. I mean, that's something like you just never imagine being a part of. And I almost felt uncomfortable in a way because like we walked out with Kyrie Irving, and it's like, you've got these athletes and I'm a caddy, but
Joe, at least you look like you could be an athlete, unlike the rest of us.
So that was just such a cool experience to be a part of that whole thing, walk in the stadium, the whole deal. And I was so glad that Rick pushed for that and that the U.S. team okayed that. But there's one other thing that stands out in my mind, and it's a little bit of a story. But Rickie and I, being the only guys from Team USA there the night of Team USA Golf, I should say, the night of the opening ceremonies, the basketball team was staying on a yacht. And the basketball team decided to come down so that they could get on the bus and go in with us, because we had like a 45-minute hour bus ride, whatever it was, to the opening ceremonies. And they hadn't gotten dressed yet. So they needed to shower and get dressed. So they used the Team USA, the other apartment. Well, there's 12 of them or 15 of them, and there's not enough room. So we kind of had our door cracked open. And the next thing you know, Kevin Durant is like peeking in, and Draymond Green's walking by, and Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson was actually the only one that was dressed. And so they started asking us if they can use our showers. So I've got DeMar DeRozan and Kyrie Irving and all these guys walking into our little apartment using it. And the best part about the whole thing was DeMarcus Cousins comes in and he says, "Hey, y'all, you got any drawers I could borrow?" And I looked at him and I was like, "Man, my drawers are not going to fit you." Like 7'1". He's like, "Why not, man?" And then they all started yelling at him like, "You can't ask him for that." And then Kevin Durant didn't want to go down and eat in his uniform. So he asked us for a T-shirt. And I'm like, I don't have a T-shirt that's going to fit Kevin Durant. Well, Rickie had realized that one of the T-shirts was one of those like longer T-shirts that's kind of was in style at the time, and gave his to Kevin. And Kevin said, "All right, I'll bring it back." And then I'm watching TV a few days later, and Kevin's still wearing his T-shirt. Never gave it back. So to me, that was like something that I'll never experience, like that these guys are walking in and out and that whole thing. And I just always remember that.
That's great. And Rat, how about you? Fondest memory?
Yeah, I mean, just like John said, just the totality of it wrapped up into one big week. That was awesome. I mean, I really relished the competing side of things. Seamus was in the mix to get a medal. Like that was really cool to be a part of the preparation, like a normal week, but to kind of have it be tied into the Olympics and be out there like all the other athletes was something I'll always remember.
Any wild things that you witnessed maybe in the village? I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call these top athletes eating at McDonald's wild, but I mean, was there anything that you saw maybe when, someone's competition ended and they were able to let loose a little bit? Anything cool like that you remember? Starting with you, Rat.
Well, I'll say this kind of secretively. There wasn't as much wild stuff going on as I had in my head that it was going to be completely honest. Now, we were there. We got there on, the weekend before it started, but then we left afterwards to go to Knoxville, Tennessee, of all places, which is like, man, we should have just stayed for another week. I didn't see anything super crazy. That story from Joe is pretty funny. I don't know. Did you guys see anything crazy? I mean, there was no alcohol allowed. Not that you need to have alcohol, but there's all those things about people sneaking beer into the village, and I don't know. I didn't see anything super crazy.
Woody, how about you?
I'm kind of same boat as Rat. The only interesting thing was at the course one day. We were sitting down for breakfast, and the whole Team USA kind of sat at one table, and in comes Matthew McConaughey to join us. And I don't know if he was with Rickie or a buddy of Bubba's, but I guess his wife is Brazilian, so he was down there, and he knew either Rickie or Bubba, and he just comes and sits at our table, and I kind of looked up, and it's Matthew McConaughey, sure. Of course I'm having breakfast with Matthew McConaughey now. As if I didn't feel bad about myself enough already with all these athletes walking around. But yeah, that was the only thing that kind of stood out as a unique experience outside of the Olympics.
Joe?
Yeah, I think John put it the right way. I mean, you kind of have this picture and you heard all the stories. But because we were there the first week, a lot of that went on the second week from what I heard with the people that were done competing, because now they're having fun. And then the other factor in there was that all the like team houses and Red Bull houses and all those things were so far away. And the fact that you kind of had to get in a cab and you didn't know what area you were going to. So I didn't get to experience any of that and didn't really see anything. I'll say like John said, the gym was a pretty interesting place, just watching those athletes in there and seeing the way they were lifting and what they were doing. It's a whole nother level. But as far as the craziness, no, I didn't see much.
What was the commute like to the course each day? Woody, you mentioned, I think you stayed in a house and you weren't that far away.
Yeah, we stayed in a condo, and we had we had a couple of the tour security guys with us all the time, Nate and Steve, who did an incredible job for us. I mean, and they had basically they had one or two lanes everywhere that was specifically for Olympic athletes, the buses or the individual cars. So, we never got stuck in traffic, not once. So it was a 10-minute commute every day for us back and forth. It couldn't have been easier.
Brett, how about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, coming from the village, there was a pretty intricate bus system that was set up. And so you would walk from your, apartment and you would go and get on the corresponding bus that would go to wherever event you were trying to go to, whether you're practicing or competing. And then 20-minute bus ride, I think it was, and then, come back afterwards. I mean, there was some security to go through and whatnot, and these dedicated lanes that were there too. So it was pretty, if you were an athlete, you were getting where you needed to go. And the bus system was kind of a bit of a marvel on its own.
Joe?
Yeah, I would echo what they both said. I mean, I was coming from the village. We usually had a separate car with a driver. The Team USA did a really good job of that for Rickie and those guys that wanted to stay at the village. And they had the lanes. And really, I mean, there was a bit of traffic, but I never remember it being too bad.
You guys remember when we'd get to the course, how you had to go through security again? They'd make us put our golf bag on the X-ray machine and to go through.
Yeah,
right. I forgot about that.
Now, guys, we've seen what Woody was able to take home. Are there any special souvenirs that you, Rat and Joe, took home that you kind of cherish, a memory or anything from the Rio Games?
Well, I'm still wearing my Olympic shorts that they gave me. Those are my workout shorts with the patch on it and stuff. So, that's kind of one kind of living memory. And then I've got, maybe a poster I picked up, and there's some good photos and whatnot like that. But I don't have anything near what Woody's got there. That's quite a memento he's got.
Joe?
Yeah, and I thought about wearing it, but I thought it might be a little too much. I've got the jacket from the opening ceremony. They gave us a sport coat. So I kept that. And then they sent us like a kind of a medallion type of thing that I've got here that was for basically, I think I've got it right here actually. It was just a little thing that for like being like part of it, coach kind of a thing. So that was cool kind of as a memory. And then we got a lot of cool gear. And I think that's about all I kept.
Tell us a little bit about that gear. I think, when we see these team events, golf fans are envious of all the cool stuff that not only the players but the caddies get. What was the gear like for the Olympics? And Woody and Joe, you were on the same team, so I'm interested to hear also what Rat has to say about Team Ireland.
Yeah,
So
it was
Rat,
unbelievable. I remember getting the gear. I can't remember what event, but they sent it to an event. I think it was Hartford actually, because we were going straight from there down there. And to unbox all this stuff with USA Olympic logos on it and know that this was yours, it was quite a special feeling. I remember laying it all out on the bed and taking a picture of it. But one of the cool stories about the gear was there was this one really great jacket that was kind of, navy body and red sleeves. And it was a jacket that basically the USOC said, this is medal stand only jacket. The athletes weren't to wear it anywhere around. You only wore it if you won a medal to get on. So when Matt tapped in his last hole. We didn't get that jacket, but the players did, or the athletes did, just in case they won a medal. So when Matt, finished on 18 and he came over and gave each other a hug, knowing what it meant, and he kind of grabs me and goes, "I get to wear the jacket. I get to wear the jacket." And I said, "You're damn right you do, and you're buying me one too." So a couple weeks later, he sent me one, which was great, one of my prized possessions. But probably like you guys, whenever I wear, even the hoodie around town or anything like that, to this day, I still get comments about it, about the Olympic stuff, because it is, team events, not stuff you can buy. So it was really cool stuff to have. Great mementos.
And Rat, you mentioned the shorts, but I'm sure there was some other cool stuff too.
Yeah, I'm covered for St. Patrick's Day for life. It was cool. They were sponsored by New Balance, and we got a lot of sweet gear. I mean, what was interesting about it is every country was in charge of their own gear. So countries that had really big budgets, they were dialed in, and Ireland fell somewhere in the top third there, and we had some cool gear that we were wearing. Great shoes. I still have these green New Balance shoes that are awesome. At the end of the competition, it was kind of cool. A lot of the European caddies wanted some of the Irish stuff, and so I was kind of trading. I remember I got
I traded hats.
Did we trade something?
Hats, yeah.
Exactly. We traded hats, and I think Wee Man and I traded. He gave me a German jersey, like Rathouz German. I gave him some Irish stuff, and some of the other caddies, we traded some stuff back and forth, which was kind of cool.
Joe, how about you? Any trades with other guys?
Yeah, I mean, they've kind of talked about most of the gear. The cool thing that they do at the Olympics is they do these pins. So like you have like Team USA Golf or Team USA Swimming or Ireland Golf or whatever, and everybody kind of had their pins. So you kind of went around, and when you got to know somebody, or if you wanted to just walk up to a stranger and ask them, you could trade pins. So that was really cool. So I have a little deal that I have my pass on and the lanyard, and I've got it covered with a bunch of different pins. That's really cool.
Woody, for you guys, was there any kind of post-event celebration getting the bronze, or were you just heading right back home?
Headed home the next day. Actually, might have been that night. I can't remember. I know that they had to stick around an extra day, and I think they did the Today Show with the golf team down on the beach with Phelps and a couple other people the next morning. But the flight we had the next week off. The flight was going back, I believe, to Florida, and I live in California, so I ended up just booking my own flight from there home. So no, it wasn't a huge, massive celebration. It was a great feeling and a job well done, but there wasn't a huge celebration or anything like that for us.
Mm-hmm. And Woody and Joe, I just wanted to ask you too. You brought up Hazeltine earlier. The Ryder Cup was just a month and a half or so after the games, and U.S. wins for the first time in a while on home soil. That had to be a pretty incredible year for you guys to take part in the Olympics and then get that win on home soil. So, Joe, starting with you, just tell us what that moment was like.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the Olympics, being a part of that, how cool it is. And then for us, not making the team and the whole Olympics having something to do with that, with our scheduling and everything else, and then getting picked, and then Rickie going and having his best Ryder Cup and us winning the Ryder Cup. So it kind of capped off the year and made it all worth it to go to the Olympics, because we had missed that Ryder Cup team, not gotten picked and missed the Tour Championship. Now you're sacrificing a lot to go to those Olympics. And so we kind of got the best of all of it, and it turned out great.
Woody?
Yeah, same. We didn't make the team on points either, so we were a pick along with Rickie. But it was quite a special year when you really look back on it and think about what you got to do. And I don't want to be melodramatic, but what you got to do for your country. Neither of the events you're getting a lot of money for. You're not getting paid, not the normal percentage of whatever your players making, but those two events meant so much, knowing you're doing it for something larger than yourself and larger than a check. I'll look back on that year and probably think it's one of the most special years of my career for sure.
And Rat, starting with you, is there any letdown when you get to that next event after the Olympics? I mean, it's not the same scale.
Yeah, when it's in Knoxville, Tennessee, there is a little bit of letdown. But we had a nice place to stay with a host family, and it was actually pretty good to decompress. I mean, it was it whipped you. It took a lot out of you being there all week and going to. It's not a normal week for us. All the events we did, on top of competing. So it was nice to finally rest a little bit. It was a little bit of a letdown, but man, the memories kind of carried us through.
And Joe, you didn't really get to decompress until, I guess, that tour championship week, right? Because you said you went right to Wyndham and then into the playoffs.
Yeah. So for us, there wasn't really a thought of it because, as I've stated a few times before, we were trying to make the tour championship and trying to make the Ryder Cup team. So it was like, let's get back on the horse in Greensboro and let's go. And then try to manage, his energy levels and things like that because we were there. And like John said, long flight, playing all these tournaments, all the events, all the outside stuff. So it was just trying to kind of manage his energy levels to keep him fresh as we went through the playoffs.
And Woody, did you guys have that next week off Wyndham, or did you?
We did, yeah. We didn't play Wyndham, so it was nice to come home and decompress and repack, put everything away, and just kind of go over the week in your mind and see friends and family before you had to go out again. So it was nice having that week off. I don't know. It would have been hard to get up for the next week for sure if we were playing.
Mm-hmm. Last question for the three of you guys. Woody, we'll start with you. In terms of career highlights in caddying, where does that week rank? And I do think this is one of those events, Joe and Rat, you can speak to this better than I can, but it kind of transcends getting on the podium. Just to be a part of it had to be amazing. But Woody, starting with you, where does it rank?
Yeah, it's up there with anything. I mean, because it's most likely, like Joe brought it up earlier, we're going to caddy in a lot of other tournaments, Opens and Masters and U.S. Opens. And chances are, medal or not, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be part of an Olympic Games. So to think back on it that way, it's way up there because most likely it won't ever get the chance to do it again. So yeah, it's top 10 of my career for sure.
Wow. And Joe?
Yeah, I would say that the experience, like what he said, hopefully it's not a once in a lifetime experience, but if it is, that's fine. Like the way that it was and to be a part of something so much bigger than golf was so cool. All these other things are way bigger to me in the golf world. If we can someday win a major and those Ryder Cups and all those things in the golf world, but this transcends the golf world. It's so much bigger than that. So many people would love to be a part of Olympics, and I got to do all those things. And so, yeah, of course, it's going to be a big memory for me.
Rat?
Yeah, personally for me, kind of a lot like those guys are saying. I might have a few other highlights in my caddy career that are maybe bigger than that. But in terms of my lifetime, in my a highlight of my life, that's right up there. And I think if you went and dropped any of us in like Timbuktu, and you're talking to some random person, and you're like, yeah, I've been to the PGA Championship, and they're like, well, what's the PGA Championship? And you're explaining it to them stuff. They're like, oh, well, I caddied in the Olympics. And like, oh, the Olympics, like it's bigger than golf, and so it's hard to compare it to the golf stuff. Almost, and maybe as the event goes on, that'll be interesting to see. As golf continues on, the Olympics, where it kind of ranks in the golf world as it unfolds. But it's a lifetime achievement for sure.
And Woody and Joe, if you guys can even remember how to pronounce it, does Rat have a new nickname on tour?
I was just literally going to ask him what it was again because I already forgotten it. So we need tell us it one more time, Rat.
Yeah. So Chalk Froncock.
Slow.
Chalk is actually Teach, and then Fran Fran, and then Cock is like Cach. So if you want to throw an O on there too, Ronan and Harrington, that's all they call me is Sean and Chalk Froncock. And they told me I needed to get it on my credential. And I did.
Yes, he definitely has a new nickname on tour now. Absolutely.
Love it.
One of the best.
That's great. Guys, that's all the time we have for today. Big thanks to John Rathouz, Joe Skovron, and John Wood for joining the Caddy Network's Under the Strap podcast. I'm TJ Auclair. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back with another podcast next week. Until then, stay safe.